Hello everybody and welcome back to another video from the Theory of Racelessness. Before the clip, we have some very exciting news. Dr. Sheena Mason, Dr. Carlos Hoy, and Greg Thomas present Resolving the Racism Dilemma, a full-day conference coming up this September 24th, 2022. Register using the link in the description box down below to experience these leading voices as they explore and discuss how to correct the misguided notions of race. Now, enjoy the video.
I had an aha moment reading Racecraft by Barbara and Karen Fields. It was a slow kind of progression. I was getting there anyway. Thomas Chatterton Williams's book, and plenty of people have spoken about this sort of thing before. And my own kind of just position as a kind of ambiguous identity. It was very difficult for people to put me in one little box for many reasons. But yeah, after reading Racecraft, I was just like, oh man, I am done with this. I'm militantly anti-race now. And I'm going to do whatever I can to divorce myself from this concept and to elucidate it to everyone else.
Yes. And when I hear you say that, what I hear is I'm anti-race because I'm anti-racism. And I see the way in which racism created the thing called race, often masquerades itself as race. So that when you talk about anti or race or abolishing the idea of race, you're not suggesting that who people are gets erased, right?
No, not at all.
And something else that I thought of earlier too was when you were describing, I can't remember if it was in direct relation to race or if it was a different concept, but you were talking about how ideas such as race actually work to keep people divided from themselves and from other people. And I think some people who are new to alternative philosophies of race, who might be grappling with this, what they might hear, because I've heard it myself, is that you're saying that differences are bad, that we all have to be the same or something to that effect. Is that how you see this thing? Or do you see, when you talk about, clinging to something like race, which would have us believe that we are fundamentally different from other people, that reinforces division? So if we remove the thing called race, in your mind, does that mean, oh, now everyone is the same?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think the thing that it does, and the thing that I worry about, is it creates a fundamental division between people, this unbridgeable divide. That's what I think is the main thing, right? So, there are rivalries between people of different countries, right? For millions of reasons, right? Like I just remember I used to work at a pizzeria, and one of the delivery drivers was from Brazil, and one of the cooks was from El Salvador. And for whatever reason, the cook from El Salvador couldn't stand Brazilians for some reason, right? And we can look at that and say that's ridiculous. How on earth could you possibly think you know this guy just because he was born on this patch of dirt that we happen to call this thing, right? Like, we know countries are made up, we know borders are made up, and sure, culture is a thing, right? But you have no idea if you guys agree on a million things. You have no idea. So this arbitrary kind of division between you, we all can recognize as silly and terrible, and we can see the negative effects of it, right? But with the race thing, because it's presupposed as being real, it's a fundamental division that many people don't see as being bridgeable, right? Like, I will never be like you because you're a different race than me. And that's the thing that I think is really corrosive and unnecessary, because it's just as silly as a border. It's just as silly and made up as a country. It's actually more silly because it's less useful, right? Like, you can actually know a little bit more about a person if you know where they're from than just by looking at their skin color, right? Like, especially if you're talking about people racialized as black, right? You see somebody from Mississippi and then somebody from Oklahoma, and you're like, oh, you guys are the same. They'll be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. They like different music. They eat different food. They have different cultural, norms and all sorts of stuff. They probably couldn't be more different. And they're probably much more alike than their racialized white neighbors, right? They're probably more alike to their racialized white neighbors than they are to one another, right? Because they live next to each other. So race is an even worse concept than something like ethnicity or a country kind of origin, right? Like there are levels of specificity, and for example, for me, knowing that I'm Dominican American is going to tell you very, very little about who I actually am. But you might get some things right, right? You might get, oh, you probably eat this kind of food, right? It's probably common in your family to eat this sort of food, maybe this kind of music, right? But then you'd also be wrong about that because I don't really like a lot of that music, and et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes down to skin color, especially the major categories of white and black, like looking at a person and just saying, oh, you're a white guy, I know everything I need to know about you, that's crazy, because you're talking about how many people from how many continents, how many different countries, how many different cultures and subcultures within those cultures, and it just varies so much, and it tells you almost nothing, basically nothing.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes by Toni Morrison, she says the same thing, that you can, if you're walking down the street and you see a person and you identify them as being an X race, you still know absolutely nothing about that person and who they
Exactly.
are, which is true, but it's hard. I feel like it's increasingly challenging for many people to really grasp that. Something you
Mm-hmm.
said earlier was the sort of accidental ways in which sometimes race grafts onto um, geographic populations and things like that, but that it's accidental.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself all day, Angel. You see how live I am on Twitter. Yeah, I'm there always responding to people and talking with people. And it's like a broken record. You're talking about ethnicity, you're not talking about race. You're talking about
Yeah.
ethnicity, you're not talking about race, because ethnicity includes ancestry, includes genetics. So that includes DNA, all of those things. So we don't ignore science and theory of racelessness, we embrace it. And in
Right.
fact, our embracement of it is pointing us to the thing that's actually true scientifically, which is ethnicity. And then you
Right.
have the man-made stuff that goes along with ethnicity, right? Like culture, religion, etc. But there's a way in which conflating the idea of ethnicity with that of race just continues to perpetuate the problem. I find it to be.
We hope you enjoyed that highlight. To watch the full version, use the link in the description box down below. Before we go, here's another reminder for Resolving the Racism Dilemma with Dr. Sheena Mason, Dr. Carlos Hoyt, and Greg Thomas. We highly encourage you check out the great things being offered at this conference, September 24th. All of the conference information is linked down below. We hope to see you there.